Yeah.
I like it.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a very special forms class. We are going to be reviewing all of the new forms changes as of today, 7/11/2023. We're always open. We're going to be using, free Slurpee day it is, isn't it? We're going to be reviewing all of the red line forms, and what those are is the actual prints of sample prints of the forms showing exactly what changed. These are one of the best ways to learn, what has changed, what is removed, what is added, and it just makes a lot more sense seeing it this way. If you just went directly to the brand new form, you opened it up, you're like, oh, whoa, this is different, but then it's not quite as easy to identify where every single change is. And so today we are going to dive in deep and go through all of these changes. I hope I have enough. I'll probably have to get up and get another thing of water here because it's going to be a lot of talking. Let's see. Please silence your cell phones for everybody's enjoyment of class. We do have print copies coming. They're coming off the machine right now, but there's 89 pages. And so we're printing those front and back. Did not have enough time to separate some of the ones like manufactured home and apart, like stuff that we weren't going to quite utilize. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can jump right in. All right, everybody in Zoom can see, hopefully, the exclusive sale listing agreement. Somebody unmute and let me know so we can move on.
Yep.
We can see it.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so here we go. Obviously, dates have changed, so all of them are from July 2023 now for an updated form. Do not use outdated forms. Definitely, as today goes forward, we're supposed to use new forms.
So if you already have one signed that's going on market like this week.
Correct. Anything you have signed, mutual acceptance is valid and fine. You do not have to worry about changing those.
So what happens if somebody presents an offer on an outdated form after the 23rd?
I'm one of those people that I want mutual. Get the mutual. I mean,
Sign
technically,
it.
yeah. Technically, no, you're really not supposed to be using any outdated forms, period, ever. But if it means you're getting a deal secured for you and your client, then absolutely 100%. I say you just do it.
But anything that was signed like last week or whatever, then we could still use it because you have a listing agreement.
Yeah, anything prior to this with mutual is all good. You're still going forward. All right, so let's dive in here to the 1A. The very first change is right in this section. They've crossed out the amount of compensation payable to the firm shall be reduced by the amount paid to such other members. Well, they kind of looked at this as the attorneys and said, wait a minute, it makes it sound like you could pay a member directly. And of course, with the DOL licensing laws, you can never pay a broker directly for compensation. So it's against the Department of Licensing, it's against the law. So they've changed it and amended it to state the listing firm and the compensation payable to buyer brokerage firm shall be reduced by the amount paid to such other buyer brokerage firm. So they just basically cleaned that section up, and it kind of repeats in the same thing up above. So they've just basically cleaned that up. Next is talking about the RCW, where conversations of persons. Seller acknowledges that intercepting or recording conversations of persons in the property. So this is talking about recording devices. Your sellers have recording devices, the rings and all that stuff. And if they listen in on, they're not allowed to listen in on conversations in their property.
Even though we tell them.
Even though you tell them, they might still do it, but when they sign this agreement, they basically say that they're not allowed to do that. And then it also says, now they've added, and seller shall indemnify and hold firm and other members of the MLS harmless for any related claims.
Okay.
So now they've kind of layered in some protection in that. I don't know. I'm guessing something has happened in order, why they updated this. So there's probably some lawsuit or something. All right, seller's warranties section. they're clarifying words now again to shall, removing agrees. So they talked about this, like a year and a half ago, that they were gonna start doing this.
Hold on, Eric, on this number 7, if they say that the conversation is being recorded, does that get them off the hook for this like consent? Like if they are saying that you are being recorded, the sellers? No.
I wouldn't even do it. I don't know. I haven't looked at that RCW in a really long time, but I mean, really,
Yeah,
there's
I've
no
seen it.
reason for a seller to do that. It's, I
So
mean, it's
even
not
the
good.
ring, everything, no recording.
Yeah, I think ring, I mean, that's the one on the outside of your house. It's really kind of a little bit more safety reasons, you know, on why people have those. I think those are okay, right? Because that's only, it's
Okay. Cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
I wouldn't.
But sellers.
Interior though. Yeah,
I heard the agent and the buyer, and this is what they said.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, yeah.
yeah. Oh, I heard that the client said they'd be willing to pay 100,000 over. Let's just counter them. No. How did they find out that I was willing to pay 100 grand over? I don't know. Stuff like that. You got to remind the clients that they can't have the recording going, or at least they can't have audio is the main thing. It's audio, it's the conversations. All right, keep going. Fair housing, they've updated and added in the section about local, state, and federal. And then cased,
Yeah,
passed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, color code. Yeah, you gotta add that too. So that's been updated.
What does that mean, Tara? We both want to know.
cast. Cast is like the lineup of where you are in society. Yes.
Oh,
Like if we're talking about
Yeah.
royalty, like kings,
Yeah.
queens, da, 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 like where you are in society. Yeah.
I don't know, that makes me a jester then. All right, keep going. Closing, this section's been updated on the FERPTA. And it says, and firm may provide a copy of the FERPTA certification to escrow and the buyer. So they've clarified a little bit more in detail here. This one they were talking about a while ago that they were going to clean this up. And seller shall pay any fees, including any fees incurred by the buyer related to such withholding and payment. So they've further explained what will happen if the seller is a foreign alien selling real estate in the state of Washington. All right, let's move on to, here's the 1C, the listing agreement addendum. This is that, let's see. They've changed it for buyer broker, that's the same thing. And local city, yeah, same thing. Passed, all right, that one we could skip. Next is the multifamily. We'll use this one. A lot of these same changes are going to be across the board, but we really have to kind of go through these things one at a time. They have add microwave, hot tubs. How many times were we writing in microwave? But you guys notice one thing, remember they've updated is the plural.
Yeah, everything.
So everything is plural. That's the thing that you really have to know about included items now. So if it's, I mean, it says refrigerators. If your client's got the Samsung, you know, with the TV on it in the kitchen that texts you when the milk is low, and in the garage, there's the split pea green, you know, ugly one, your client does not want the stupid one in the garage, you're going to have to put it in the excluded item section. You're gonna have to start identifying a lot more clearly what is included and what is not included. This is something that we really always struggle with. Brokers constantly like, oh, there's a shed, there's this, there's that. If it's questionable at all, or if your client goes, oh my God, I love that greenhouse, write it in. You just have to get into the habit of writing it in. Question?
So if it says refrigerators and they only want the one in the kitchen,
Yep.
you cross off the yes.
No.
Kitchen.
Yeah, you have to, now in that situation where I described the story of the Samsung one and the green one, you're gonna have to clarify in the excluded items, go ahead and mark refrigerators, and then in 22D, page 2, excluded items, you're gonna write green refrigerator, you know, whatever brand located in the garage shall be removed by seller prior to closing. You know, something just definitely specific where it's clear, black and white. Jim?
How do we handle when someone takes a TV, but the bracket's still on the wall? How does that typically handle?
They usually
For a
do
friend.
that.
Yeah, ask it for Brian. So TV, so I mean, same thing, TVs are now, they're still in here. So if it's, wait a minute, where is, yeah, they did, attached TVs. So it's all of them. If your seller has a TV in every room and including the bathrooms, and you have that box marked, that seller is supposed to include every single TV in the house. I mean, that's the thing, and it's clear, that's attached TVs. If it's on a stand, that is not included. It doesn't count. The racks, people leave, there's no clarity in our contracts on the racks. There is none. So if you want that TV gone, you better state that the rack also be removed and that the wall be patched and painted to match. I mean, you just have to get into a habit of being super duper clear on every single thing you write. Another question?
So on refrigerator, you're gonna still check it and then go to the 22D and write only the one in the kitchen?
Mhm.
Are we gonna get to the 22D?
We're gonna get to everything.
Okay.
All right, so same thing. Cameras has been moved to this section. TVs and everything else is moved down into here. So all of this whole line is gonna have all these items, but now they're saying cameras, security cameras, because the MLS had complaints again and, you know, again and again. The client took the mounted cameras. Isn't that attached? Isn't that what attached means? So now it's the same thing. If your seller's gonna have those items and they don't want to include something, right? I don't care if it's the TV or it's a camera or whatever. You not only should mark it and maybe put a, you know, do the tags, you know, inside of the house, the ones that like McKenna makes for you guys.
Will not stay.
Yeah, TV will not stay. Cameras are not included. Also noted in the listing and the agent only remarks, but then guess what? What is the most important thing?
Okay.
The contracts. The contracts is where it is all going to happen. So you have to clarify in the contract, regardless of whatever it says in the listing or on the note cards or whatever. It's the same thing about the fridge, the washer dryer, all those things. If it says they're not included, that is not enough to not include them in the actual agreement. So just whenever it comes to any item, just start making that your practice. You know, that every single time you're going to do this. All right. They've clarified and added US dollars on the front. It states it in the agreement, which is kind of funny, but now they wrote it. But I think because brokers were writing this in. Have you guys seen this once in a while?
I haven't.
I've seen it where they wrote US dollars. Bitcoin. Same thing. Now, earnest money is totally, you don't have to define the earnest money. It's now just, that's gone. How much is the earnest money? Okay. And when is it due by? That's it. And they're saying US dollars. So now they're clarified there. Earnest money is going to be US dollars. You're going to clarify when it is. When is the best time you think you should write in there for how many days it should be delivered? What do you think? What's a good number?
2 days.
3 days is probably the very best you should be writing now.
Why is that?
The reason is that before they made the rule change about us defining how many days, it used to be 2 if the client delivered. If the client gave the earnest money to you, it became 3 days. And there was way too much confusion in that.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with wiring issues all the time. Some banks wire at different times, different cutoffs. I would try to have 3 days. Because otherwise you might put your client into jeopardy on the seller being able to terminate on them. And we just had a deal I heard about from Bellevue where the client or the broker lost the deal because they were late depositing their earnest money because they put days and they wired it and it came late. They got a much, much better offer. Seller terminated, said bye. And the deal went away. So it's one of those things. I think it's a best practice to put 3 days. If your client can guarantee they'll for sure have it in the 2, just, or 1, and you're trying to do that and be super squeaky clean and trying to get it, be super competitive. And I get that, but if it all of a sudden makes it to where that seller can terminate on you because it's late, then, and don't think that that's a trump card that you can hang on to, like later, like, oh, it was late, let's keep going. And then if they do anything, we'll totally back out on them. That doesn't work. We dealt with that last year. So that one won't work. If you show continuance that you're basically going in good faith and letting them do an inspection and letting them do, negotiate back and forth, and then all of a sudden you get mad and want out and won't fly.
So you'd have to do it right then.
Yep, you can't delay it. Right. You laugh, people have done it. Okay, next change is the to be held by, and then the very last one they've added in the form of a promissory note included as an addendum. If you're doing a promissory note, you got to use the promissory note. I think promissory notes are kind of, the only time I really ever see them now is on the big vacant land deals. I see, new construction, vacant land. Yeah, Mercer, yeah, I know, there's some pockets where they still use it. But now that you can clearly identify of how many days right on the front page for the box when it's due, I don't know. It's one of those things, even Annie's argued on this one, like I don't really know why we still have them, but they're still in use. So there's the update there. Let's continue. I love this update. Number 15, the information verification period. What numbers was this in the form or letter? W. You can clearly identify now item W. So there's no more changing, crossing it off, adding initials. The forms committee did not like this one because they know that this protects our sellers to allow a buyer to do their verification, right? When it's waived, there's dangers in that. They talk about this all the time, but it's prevalent in our marketplace. It's just been this way for years now because of just the Uber frenzy market and the competition. Brokers are doing anything to get their buyers' offers accepted. So the verification period. What was that?
What do you say for numbers then?
Well, the default is how many? 10. So I don't know. I mean, it's all up to the client. And don't forget, anything can be verified. Anything, even the broker fills in. We helped our buyer get out of a deal last year because they put on the flyer that the home has AC. And when we told the listing broker, she said, no, it doesn't. We go, yeah, we know that. That's why we're backing out. You can't back out. You got no inspection. We're like, no, we had 3 days to verify and you put a flyer, like, no, we didn't. And then I scanned the flyer over. Her assistant copied the old listing, replaced the photos, and it left AC from the previous property, and we walked and got our client their earnest money back. So they can even walk on even verifying things that we provide. It's material items. Yep.
But to answer your question, I think we want to tighten it up.
Yeah.
10 days is ridiculous. For anything.
Or you can do the satisfied waited is a good one.
Yeah. Or you mark the box satisfied and waived. So no, now it's a box instead of you guys crossing, making counters.
If there's 10 offers, like.
Yeah.
If you want to do that.
Okay, so none of these other items changed, they just besides the number. So that's it. All of these are the same. Again, just to reiterate about, last year about the compensation being on the front. We're still seeing a ton of pay is offered boxes not being checked. And we keep getting the question, what does that mean? Does that mean the buyer broker even gets compensation? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I've never played one on TV. So it's these things, but starting next year, the first of the year, it's gonna be a whole different ballgame. I mean, it's completely gonna change. Our industry, our clients and consumers are gonna have, a rude awakening on how everything's gonna work. You can't even work with a buyer without the agreement. Starting January, so I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
It's just gonna become a whole new thing for us to be able to practice and be able to give great buyer consultations. And then get those signed so that the clients understand how things work. It just puts clarity in our,
For sure.
in our industry. Yeah, exactly.
They're not gonna allow you to have any buyers without a buyer agreement. Have to have a buyer.
You have to. Yeah,
But how enforceable is that? In court later, you know, it's just like.
January.
I don't know. I guess I wouldn't want to find out. I don't want to find out. Yeah.
If they, right now, they don't have to sign an agreement with Redfin.
Yeah. They'll be getting, yeah, I'm guaranteeing Redfin will be probably one of the ones that are gonna have to like get a lot of people to, yeah, it'll be interesting because most of their brokers are showing agents and the ones that hold opens and they don't do any people, none. So it'll be curious to see what their app, I'm guessing their service agreement and stuff when using their app is gonna update. Guaranteed. They'll probably have a disclosure like, as soon as we show you a house, be prepared to sign an agreement that you're working with us.
Yeah.
Something to that effect, as I'm guessing.
I thought there was like a little box, you check something on.
Oh, they have a thing that says like, yeah, but it's not,
Showing. It was-
without signing an agreement, you can't do that. It'll be interesting. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what they do. We'll see. All right, let's continue. We're still going in the multifamily. Oh, it's still going. Yep, so they've raised the fee for the interpleading process from 500 to 750. I thought they were gonna do 1,000. They talked about it and said before. But I guess they settled on 750 for the cost thereof. The parties acknowledge that RCW 220 requires the court to award the closing agent its reasonable attorney's fees and costs associated with an interpleader action. So obviously if the winner wins and they bring an attorney, that attorney, they can get reimbursed for their attorney fees. So they're making it clear and adding it into that section for the earnest money. Included items and all associated operating and remote controls and access permissions. I think what they're talking about is like, we've had complaints about the codes for stuff or the garage codes, things that are mounted and connected. Like you're supposed to give those up upon closing for people to change gate codes.
What if people don't have it? You know, they never had it from the person.
Then they don't have it. I mean, how do you prove it? All right. Keep going, same thing, access codes. So seller shall deliver keys, garage door remotes, and access codes to buyer on the closing date or possession date, whichever occurs first. We get this question all the time, like, when do we have to give them the keys? The seller stays on the property for 2 months. Does it say anything about that, about when someone's staying?
Usually the seller gives the main owner the keys.
It's closing. They get a key on closing, no matter what.
They're a tenant.
Yeah, they're a tenant and that becomes a tenant. Exactly. I know. All right, keep going. Okay, seller shall pay all utility and internet charges. So they've updated that. So if you got charges on internet, which I didn't think you could even get behind on the internet, don't they just cut that off?
Yeah, it's not simple. I don't know.
And it's not a lienable item. So that'll be, yeah. So now they're gonna start looking at the internet charges.
Maybe in different counties, you know, like east or somewhere.
Maybe. Again, the FERPA was updated with the exact same verbiage as the 1A. Seller shall pay any fees incurred by buyer related to such withholding and payment.
It doesn't look like they already did that.
Yeah, the FERPA says it, but now it's in the agreements. They're just triple plying.
Yeah.
Going. Ah, so they got rid of his and her. They just said, consent to that person and designated broker. So they've removed his and her. And then listing brokerage. Oh, specific term, 17. Yeah, they had to update that. Because those numbers drop down a number. All right, okay, information verification period. This section is going to be across the board for all our agreements. And like I said, it's now on the front page, which is nice, but now it already says in here, information verification period, unless satisfied or waived, buyer shall have the time period set forth in specific term number 15. It's 10 days after mutual acceptance, if not filled in, to verify all information provided by seller or listing brokerage firm related to the property. This contingency shall be deemed satisfied unless buyer gives notice identifying the materially inaccurate information within. They've removed 10 days because that's what it was. The time period set forth in specific term number 15. If buyer gives timely notice under the section, this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. So there it is. It's all cleaned up. No more changes on the W. There's no more, you don't have to cross that off at all. It's all front page, so. Change. All right, X. And then the last thing they've changed in here for property condition disclaimer is buyers advised to investigate whether the property is suitable for buyer's intended use and to ensure the water supply is sufficient to meet buyer's needs. So they put some more clarity in the words there for water availability. And now they've changed the letter. Oh, they've separated it to Y. Okay, and then they've added Z for fair housing. So they've made these both now a little bit separated. So this is all the new fair housing. All of this is new language into the agreement. Seller and buyer acknowledge that local, state, and federal fair housing laws prohibit discrimination based on sex, marital status, sexual orientation, gender, identity, race, creed, color, caste, national origin, citizenship, or immigration status, families with children status, honorable discharge veteran or military status, the presence of any sensory, mental, or physically disabled or disability, or the use of a support or service animal by a person with a disability. So there is that. All right, residential agreement, same thing. The updates, the hot tub is now in here now, which is nice. They've moved that around. There's only one hot tub. There's no plural on that one. They removed it. Or yeah, that's weird though. I'm wondering if this one is gonna have the S. It should, because I was told all items will have S's. Yeah, well, we only have the red lines in that. We'll have to check it. We'll have to check on the actual form.
21, which one?
Okay, so attached TVs again. Other box is now slid over. They're going to condense those, obviously. Again, earnest money is going to say US dollars, and it doesn't matter where it comes from for the check, the note, the type, or any of that, but just that everything is in purchase in US dollars. So this is exactly the same. Again, now they've added clarity and they put it'll be closing agent or held by buyer brokerage firm. And then the last add is in the form of promissory note included as an addendum. Same thing for information verification period, and they've slid the numbers down. So we're good there. And then addenda, obviously that went down too. All right, keep going. Okay, same thing. So interpleading costs up $750 now. And then and access permissions. This is the same. Same thing for access codes are going to have to be provided. And internet charges paid by seller. Seller shall pay any fees incurred by buyer related activities. Same thing for FERPTA. So far, these changes are exactly the same as the multifamily. Information, same thing. That's all changed for information verification period. Same. So why is the fair housing is now added into the end? All right, financing addendum. Let's jump to this one. Questions or anything, comments? What do you guys think of those changes?
Great.
It's good, huh?
Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's liking the W. All right, financing addendum. They've gotten rid of home equity or line of credit. It's just home equity. Whatever that may be. Down payment program is completely added.
So if you're doing an
If you're doing a down payment program,
And just click oh.
no, you don't even have to click both. Even if it's an FHA backed program, it's a down payment assistance program. Boom. Now you're marking it. Financing contingency in addition to the loans. So this language is added. Buyer shall make a down payment in the amount of, now you got a percent or a dollar. So they put a lot more clarity in that they're going to make a down payment. And then they remove the down in addition to the loans. So it's just little bit clearer.
So if they're doing it zero down AI assistance and zero.
Yep, that'll be down payment, and then the amount down that the buyer's actually giving is zero. Because it's coming from the program.
Yeah.
I think it's totally fine to put clarity, and if you wanted to write into the blank box that it's an FHA 203K rehab loan or whatever, I think it's totally fine to go ahead and put what that loan is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst one is and you guys know this, it's like, oh, it's an FHA backed, program. Like I just said, like the 203K rehab, you mark this and that's all that's marked. That's not good. No, now you put your buyer's earnest money in jeopardy because they're using a different loan than what you said you're using. Plus, it's not 3.5% down. The 3.5% has to be coming from the client. This line right here is the amount coming down from their client, or maybe it's from a gift, but then you got to disclose further in the EF. So just adding a little extra nugget of info there.
Can you clarify that again? So if it's an FHA where the person is receiving a gift,
Mhm.
then we gotta check FHA, and then it's, let's say it's also a down payment. So you gotta check all three, FHA, down payment, and other.
So okay, you added 3 different things in there. So if it's an FHA like rehab or an FHA down payment assistance program, all you need to do is check that new box that's been clarified that it's a down payment program. So that's all you have to mark. Or you can use the blank box and then write what the actual name of the program is. The amount down payment is how much money they are putting down, the buyers themselves. The only caveat to that, and the only difference is if they are getting gift funds, you just have to disclose that on the 22 EF. So even if let's say the parents are giving them 50 grand or whatever, even if it's like the earnest money, you have to disclose like whatever is coming from a gift, you have to state that on the 22 EF.
Does that include if it's, let's say, the ECU grant of 10 grand?
That's not a gift fund. That's a program. That's a down payment program. If the amount down from the buyer in that grant, if the buyer's really putting nothing down, 0 is going in there.
I just want to ask, are you hearing from your lenders every time they're getting a gift money? Because I don't feel like I'm being told that every time.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's definitely been a lot of cases we've had, where the buyer didn't disclose, they're using gift funds.
But I'm not-
And the lender doesn't say anything and all of a sudden there's an issue and they're like, oh no, it looks like grandma's not giving me the down payment money that she said she's gonna. But that's why during your consultations, you gotta hit them with the Jerry Maguire clause that I talk about, item A in our agreements. Every single time, show me the money. Show me the money. You gotta like think that every single time you're talking with clients, with buyers specifically. Say, okay, so the earnest money, your down payment, is that in your checkings or in checking or in savings? That's how you say it every time. And they're like, oh, well, actually, mom and dad are gifting me, $50,000. Oh, okay, well, great, not a problem. Well, we know how to handle that. 22 EF, Jim?
So what I heard you say is that, so we don't have to mark, we're representing a buyer like an FHA with down payment assistance. You just have to mark down payment.
You mark the down payment assistance program. Yep, the new box down payment program. That's what they're calling it now because that's what it is. It's a down payment program. If you wanted to clarify and say, oh, it's the home key program or whatever it's called, from BECU, or a lot of them have their own programs that they name. Or the grants or any of those. It's really all about where is the buyer's down payment. If it's coming from a different source and it's a program, or it's the Pierce County, like housing assistance, right? Like that. Any of those, you're still gonna clarify either way. It's either the box, or if you know the name and you want to clarify, write it just in the blank one.
I would think you'd want.
The other.
I would think you want to clarify, because you have a down payment program and you're applying for a specific down payment program, you get denied. Someone might say, look, there's a million different down payment.
Yeah,
programs
I want you to
out there.
apply for the other
I
one.
want you to apply for 27 others.
Yeah.
So I would think you'd want to be specific to protect your buyers.
Yeah, a lot of times. I mean, this kind of falls back onto the communication stuff we were talking about yesterday in class. Like, you gotta be the best communicator possible in this industry to communicate with those lenders and everybody involved.
A lot of those down payment programs have, they have to get their own approval.
Oh, yeah.
You get an approval, then
Yep.
it goes through a second approval, and so you have to wait, and if the other party doesn't know, would be like, why are we not closing? Well, we have to send it to
Yeah.
down payment, now they have to put their
Mhm.
initial in it, so.
Yeah, there's a lot more involved in those too. So it's really all comes back to your guys' consultations with the buyers. So just I want you to think of Jerry Maguire, just sitting there and just like, okay, I gotta ask, where's the funds? Checkings or savings, checkings or savings. As soon as it's not in checkings and savings, you pretty much are gonna have to do something else. 22 EF is probably going to be involved. So that's the way to look at it. All right. Guys ready to move on? All right, next section is the VA loan. Note that VA regulations prohibit buyer from paying loan and settlement costs exceeding 1% of the amount of the loan. Buyer's waiver of the financing contingency shall not change the party's obligations under this paragraph 3. We get a ton of questions on this, and there's a lot of people definitely that do not like this whole thing about when it comes to FHA and VA. You all know that if it's an FHA or VA deal, there's automatically going to be additional charges to the seller. Whether it's $300 for FHA or the whole buyer's half of escrow. So as soon as this, you're choosing FHA or VA financing and the seller's like, yep, we'll accept that deal. That half of escrow gets added. The buyer does have the option to pay it themselves and they can check the box. This is the only thing that's to make it to where the buyer wants to pay it on their own. If they're in competing, offer situations and stuff like that, they can choose to do that. But this gets missed all the time, I'm hearing a lot of silence in here. It's either one of those ones like, yeah, Eric, that's right. Or it's, I don't remember this. One or the other. But again, buyer's waiver of the financing contingency shall not change the party's obligations under this paragraph. Meaning if buyer waived financing contingency, those other things are still applying. And you might want to do net proceeds, for your sellers when they do the VA, because when you do that in the Northwest MLS, as soon as you check the boxes for FHA or VA financing, it adds those charges in right away. So you can show them, oh, here's your net proceeds difference. And if they are paying that half of buyer's escrow fee, it's going to add those in there. You guys know how much that average amount is? Who knows?
For which one?
VA.
Perfect.
What's the average? You guys know what the average cost it's gonna cost your seller? It's over 1,000.
I was gonna say 1,500, but you're saying half of title and escrow.
Well, it depends on what the loan amount will be there. so-
Yeah, it all depends on the loan amount and everything too, but your average, like, it's gonna calculate it from that net proceeds calculator, but it could be anywhere from like 1,200 to $3,000.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, it's right in those ranges. So it gets missed a ton. So from the VA financing for the half of escrow.
I submitted an FHA or VA offer, but I don't include financing contingency
Oh.
in there. Right?
Mhm.
Then the seller is obligated and doesn't know, therefore it's important. Anything that always have on any offer that comes.
Say that again?
Well, if engagement always insists on a 22
Yeah.
with any offer that comes in, you write your listing that.
Yeah.
22 to all offers. Because you might not put in a finance contingency, you might be going to get.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. Yeah, those ones that have no 22A right away and you're like, oh, is it all cash? Duh, according to our item A, all of our deals are defaulted to all cash anyway. It says it's all cash unless otherwise specified in the agreement, period.
I've been seeing is a 22 EF, they're putting in contingent loan.
Mhm.
Yeah, like, can you please just change it to 22A?
Yeah. I mean. All right, let's keep going. Again, earnest money's been updated to say that buyer possessed sufficient non-contingent funds. It actually used to just say funds. So they're putting clarity again into their earnest money that, hey, that's non-contingent funds. You've got that funds. Checkings or savings, checking or savings. That's where it should be coming from. If it's anywhere else, you're probably gonna need a 22 EF. Less than sales price, nothing in here. Buyer's reply. A buyer shall have 3 days from either seller's notice of rejection of low appraisal, or if seller fails to respond, the day seller's response period ends, whichever is earlier, to waive the financing contingency, including waiver of this paragraph 5. So appraisal less than sales price. They're putting clarity then that if you're waiving the financing contingency, you're also waiving the appraisal if it hasn't been done yet.
What was that?
Well, no, that's part of the low appraisal, so it
For a low appraisal.
has been done.
Oh, you're right. It's already been done. But even if it's been done, so
We're waiving
including
all of the
waive,
negotiations.
yeah, you're just waiving. You're buying it as is.
Right.
Correct. Thank you. All right, next, financing, talking about inspection. They've crossed it off. Now it's just going to be called appraisal, inspection, and work orders. I love this. They put clarity because sellers were like, no, you waived inspection. Yeah, we did, but we can't get the loan if we don't have sorry, that's gonna happen. The appraiser's got to go through the property. They can actually call things out. And it's always a struggle to explain this with clients. So it's nice that they're actually going to clarify and add a lot more language into this section. So seller shall permit appraisals and inspections required by lender. What's another inspection that's required by a lender? That's not the appraiser. What was it? I heard
FHA?
FHA can, but it's more specific for the DPA loans. Your DPA loans, like 99% of them are gonna have it. It's required that the buyer has to have a receipt that they had a home inspection performed. It's not that they need the report, you have to show the receipt. So we've tons of arguments on, no, the buyer can actually have this done because you agreed to it already in the 22A, and they're like, no, you waived inspection. I'm not allowing an inspector into the home. Well, you already agreed to it.
Wait inspection and still want to go, just
Yeah.
for their own knowledge.
Oh, yeah, that does not, yeah, for buyer's information only,
You're not coming.
don't get me started. All right, seller shall permit appraisals and inspections required by lender, including but not limited to structural pest, heating, plumbing, roof, electrical, septic, and well inspections. Seller is not obligated to pay for such. Boom, now they've removed the inspections like that from here to there. And now they're clarifying appraisals or inspections unless otherwise agreed. The parties acknowledge that the lender's appraisal may condition the appraised value of the property on the completion and approval of work orders prior to closing. Appraisal work order. So now they're clarifying this is called an appraisal work order. We see these all the time on appraisals. All of a sudden the appraiser goes through and he's like, yeah, I'm putting a work order on here. If this house doesn't have the chipping paint removed, and I'm gonna have to come back and verify it's been done, then we're not gonna be able to loan on it, basically. That's what's gonna happen. It shall include a copy of appraisal work order. You can't say, oh yeah, there's a work order and the seller needs to do this. You have to provide the copy. So be prepared.
Yeah, I just went through that on my listing where the agent called and said that we had to put railings on the.
Well, that's an FHA one. That'll pop, that'll VA, FHA, that'll come up every time. And it's conventional and they called it.
The appraiser only called the deck and the agent said, we need to do the bottom stairs too. Well, the picture of what the appraisal did only pointed to the railings on top. So I texted the appraiser and said, what do you need done? And he told me, not the bottom stairs. We got the work done. And the agent said, that's not good enough. You have to do the bottom stairs. And I said, I called the lender called me and I said, we're not doing the bottom stairs. Here's the appraiser's text. And he said, good, I'll reorder it. So we need proof from now on, not just for.
Yeah.
It should have been that way a long time ago.
Yeah, well, now it's in there. All right, so if buyer is unable to obtain financing by closing due to an incomplete appraisal work order, then on buyer's notice, this agreement shall terminate. If buyer has not waived this paragraph 5, the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer after providing lender's confirmation in compliance with paragraph 4, including lender's statement that buyer was unable to obtain financing by closing due to an incomplete appraisal work order. Boy, I sure hope the lenders all know and the underwriters know that this is now clarified in our agreements, because how do you get that from the lender? Because it's got to be written out on their denial letters. So you might want to maybe hit your lenders up and kind of like get it out, get the information out to them. Because I tend to see this sometimes when we have these forms changes, it doesn't translate out to the other parties. It's, at the same speed. And the next thing you know, the lender's like, well, that's our default letter. Sorry, that's what they do. And then the seller, the listing broker's like, oh, well, your denial letter doesn't say this. We're not going to release earnest money. I just think it's a good idea just to help the lenders understand that this has been updated. Questions? No, good. All right, let's keep going. They just moved the numbers down. Yeah, so that's how now it's actually the numbered here to item. Oh, it's item D now. So they put it into the part of the appraisal. Bless you. All right, so they've numbered this now to 7, or excuse me, 6. So they've just bumped the numbers up this way. Nothing here. Oh, and then they had to change the paragraph. Okay, 22AA. This is going to be very similar. This is just where they're gonna have an appraisal agreement. Maybe there's no 22A probably. Or it's an all cash deal and they want to verify the place is worth how much they're gonna pay. So this is what you use the 22AA for. They've removed the appraisal less than sales price, and now it's called a property access. So rather than appraisal and inspection, now it's just property access. Seller shall permit access for an appraisal of the property. If buyer disclosed that buyer is obtaining a loan, seller shall permit inspection to acquire by lender, including but not limited to structural, pest, heating, plumbing, roof, electrical, septic, and well inspections. Seller is not obligated to pay for such inspections. Okay,
Is this in place of some addendum? Yeah,
AA
yeah,
is what?
this is the appraisal.
No. Well, it's just separate appraisal. It's
Okay.
just an
So it's
appraisal
not-
addendum.
okay.
There's no, it's not the 22A. It's almost the same as everything on the 22A, but it's a little bit different because there's no financing.
Right.
There's not the financing involved, but it says that it could be financing. So if you're writing a 22EF and they're fully underwritten, there's no 22A, but they still want the appraisal, you could use this also.
Well,
Oh, this has been around, yeah, a while. Yeah, you could do that too.
I've never seen that cast under do that, but.
No, you can. All right, so notice the low appraisal now, low appraisal or the appraised value is conditioned on the completion and approval of work orders prior to closing appraisal work orders. So same thing, they've added in that language now, if the appraiser calls out stuff, even on a cash deal, and you could still have conditions, no matter what conditions can come from an appraisal. So they've just put clarity in the agreements now to show that it's here and it's in the boilerplate language.
So,
So what?
no, I was just reading that
Oh.
one.
So low appraisal or any appraisal work orders, which includes a copy of the appraisal. So you got to include the copy. And now seller's response to the notice of low appraisal. So now it's notice of low appraisal or any appraisal work orders.
That's a good idea for cash deals.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
why
put
not?
that in.
Yeah, why not? Then the seller's rejection of buyer's notice, low appraisal or appraisal work orders. So seller can still reject it. And then buyer's reply, now low appraisal or appraisal work orders. So same thing, they're putting the same language throughout the addendum. And then low appraisal. Oh, they've capitalized it? Okay. All right, next section, they've removed this all completely from inspection and they've reworded it to kind of match the same thing in the 22A, work orders now. So if buyer notifies seller of appraisal work orders and seller does not provide timely notice rejecting the appraisal work orders, as required by paragraph 3D above, seller shall complete appraisal work orders by closing. If seller fails to do so and buyer cannot close due to incomplete work orders, appraisal work orders on buyer's notice, the agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyers. I kind of wish they would put in prior to, 3 days prior to closing. To kind of match the inspection contingency stuff, because you guys are trying to do your prior to closing walkthroughs. The seller's like, oh, I need more time. I'm still fixing this. And you're like, closing's tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to note that one.
Just get an extension. You know, after 5 days.
It's 5 days prior to closing, still boilerplate, yeah.
But what should be, they should be,
All repairs,
the
that's
sellers like a 24-hour notice, like not say we want to come today at 2 o'clock. There's gotta be some timeline.
No, that all falls along into the showing, instructions.
Like, hey, I come in an hour because we're closing it at the end of the day.
Well, that's not good time management by the buyer broker.
If they haven't fixed the items, I've been taking it.
I know where you're going. Uh-huh.
Then we get an extension.
Yeah, you probably have to look to
Yeah.
try to extend.
Yeah, because if they're not, the buyer's like, I don't want to extend, but we need to get the stuff done.
I know it's one of the worst things, like, that happens in our deals is that the stuff's not done or whatever, and then your buyer's like, well, do I close? Do I, you know? You know what our attorneys say, they have to go seek legal advice if they wanna not close. Because we really can't tell them, don't close. It's the only power you've got, right? The buyer's got to hold their feet, the seller's feet to the buyer to make sure it's done. But
Yeah, that is true.
the one thing is you don't delay, buyer brokers, you don't delay your schedule. So that means you're having good, clear communication with the listing broker, finding out, okay, look, are things done yet? We still need that roof repair, you need that item done. You just gotta keep, send the
But the
receipts.
listing broker doesn't always honest.
Well,
Sends
Yeah.
it.
yeah, you just gotta be on them, no matter what. All right, let's keep going. Next, so 22 AN, now we're into the notice of the low appraisal. My hunch is that they're going to go ahead and add the same verbiage in. Including paragraph 5, appraisal less than sales price. Oh, okay, yeah, so they matched up what's on the other one. That one's nothing. Next is 22B. They've removed it's just buyer's property. And buyer's property listing. So this is now A. Buyer shall list buyer's property for sale on a multiple listing service in the area after mutual acceptance of this agreement. If buyer fails to do so, this contingency and all other conditions in this agreement, including financing, inspection, or any other contingency shall be deemed waived. So now they've really put clarity. Remember how before it says that it's all waived, but now it's like, here you go. This is, the forms manual actually says, I think, almost the same thing. So it was one of those things, why isn't that all into the form itself?
So
But-
what does it say now?
So now if they don't list the property in time
Designated.
What's the old?
that you designated, it's 5 days.
Yeah.
5 days to get the property listed.
Right now.
That's business days, right? Computation of time, 5 or less.
It says by-
Weekends and holidays don't count. So if it's not live on the MLS, everything's waived. Everything's waived. Good luck getting the buyer's earnest money back. Not good.
Better sell the house.
Yeah. Oh, this is, now wait a minute, this is added. So this is the one thing, okay. This is the one thing I love. You can write in how many days it's gonna go live. So that's why they've added in the line. So now it's days and it's 5 if not filled in now.
Right.
So now you can choose. So listing brokers, what are you gonna wanna see in here?
3 days, it's,
As little as possible.
3 days.
3. Is it good? I mean, how many first impressions do you get when that property goes on the market? You get 1 first impression, so that means everything's gotta be done. That means you're gonna be, we just talked about this in class yesterday, literally just went over exactly everything in the 22B about the process and like, what do you have to do in the communication between the parties to make sure that the house isn't even gonna sell. So that's you doing a CMA on it and you checking out the house if you have to.
I was gonna say, I just.
How many have you've
I
done
just
that?
went and looked at a house,
Josh has done it?
because that we're gonna accept the contingent offer. And
Yeah.
I was like, I wanna see the house in person.
Was the buyer broker like, what?
No, they're like, that's totally fine.
It's cool, Josh.
I was just gonna say, well, we've been doing this last year, so we've had a few of them we've done this way, where we have a buyer that's shopping contingent. And they have to be contingent, we tell them, hey, we're not even gonna be out showing stuff to you until we have your house ready. So we go,
Yeah,
their house is ready, photos are done,
Yep.
that report's done, right? Because then that helps us sell it to the listing agent who we're
Yeah.
making the offer to.
absolutely.
It's not of, oh, here's all the things we have to do to get the home ready. Hey, here's the photos from that report, right?
Yeah.
Here's our CMA, and we can go live. That number can become like 1 or 2,
Yep.
because we already have the listing built in the MLS and they're just ready to go live, basically.
Yeah, that will definitely help you guys secure an offer with a contingent deal that way.
And it'll just be
If you're
more
ready.
seamless
Oh, yeah.
for everybody.
Yep. So now you can choose your timeline, but so listing brokers, it's all gonna be part of the communication process and knowing when it will be. But there's definitely been some times where, you know, things have happened or things are going on and, you know, maybe the seller will be okay with having like 10 days before it goes live or whatever. You know, it's all gonna be part of your communication, you know, with the other parties on really what's gonna be put in here. So 5 is plenty, but like Josh says, like, you better be
We used
ready.
one Where we gave them almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because one, it was coming into the 4th of July weekend,
Uh-huh.
and it was a house on a lake, and they had a wedding that was happening there. So like, okay, like, we know the house is gonna sell, we're gonna go to the market, whether it goes to the market now or when it goes to the market in 2 weeks, like, we'd rather you make sure that everything is ready
Right.
to bring it on right.
Yeah.
So that you get that first good impression. Good first impression.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So, all right, that has been updated, and then after mutual acceptance of the agreement, if buyer fails to do so, this contingency and all other conditions in this agreement, including financing, inspection, or any other contingency shall be deemed waived, and the closing date shall be 30 days from buyer's waiver. So boom, now it's like default's 5 days, you left it and you put in 5 days. On the 6th business day or what, you know, you basically, after it's waived. All right, we're closing in 30 days now. The closing date gets superseded on whatever you write on the front page. That's how it's always been. It was 3 days after the sale of the other offer that you get secured, right, on that buyer's property. Would be the actual closing date. It'd be 3 days later, but now if you end up not getting on time, now it just, everything escalates, boom, straight to 30 days later, we're closing. All right, we'll see you at closing. And everything's waived. Can't do the inspection. What if you had a 10-day inspection contingency? They're gonna do it on day 8, and then they end up missing the timeline getting the property listed. Now you have to say, yeah, well, take the lockbox off, it's already waived. I'll change the property pending. From contingent status to pending status.
I have a question on that, Eric.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the closing date is now gonna be 30 days out from, you know, potentially gets waived today, closing date is 30 days from now. Okay? But we accepted an offer, right? That we have to get permission if it's less than 30 days or more than 45 days. So we accept an offer that's 38 days out closing, our contingency is waived, so we have noticed that we've satisfied it. How do the dates line up?
Nothing else matters after that, after it's been waived. Because it's totally waived and it's on that buyer to
I
perform.
see what you're saying, the difference is waived, and what I'm talking about is satisfied.
Exactly. Yeah, you're
that-
saying it got satisfied before, you know, and you sent the notice, then none of that's gonna matter or apply.
None of that.
No, this is all,
That's a
well,
big one.
well, it was waived. It says things are waived, but
But
now
not
there's
all these.
clarity, like, hey, you are waiving all these items. Cause a lot of times people are arguing like, oh, yeah, so, yeah, we have to buy the house. No, it's not just that, it's that now everything else is waived.
Yeah.
So it's just put more clarity.
What does it say on the old one?
Oh, right, you can see, that's the beauty of these printouts. The red lines
Oh,
is what's crossed off, means that was removed or what was there before, and the red solid means this is what's been added. Okay, so now buyer's property sold. If buyer has not sold buyer's property or given notice waiving this contingency by the end of the contingency period, then this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. For the purpose of this addendum, the terms sell, selling, and sold shall mean that buyer has entered into a valid and enforceable agreement for the purchase and sale of buyer's property. Now they've added in buyer's notice of sale or waiver shall be on the contingency property notice form 90K or similar form. There was always a struggle of the buyer broker, like, oh, wait a minute, now where do I give the notice again? And then they'd send a blank notice. Oh, we contingency satisfied, and but if there's closing before 30 and after 60, that was the old rules, right? Now you had to get seller's permission. Well, there's nothing in that for
What
it.
happens if you have a
a home for sale and you get a contingent buyer, they put their home on market, they get a contingent buyer.
So you can go contingent to contingent, but that's gotta get seller's permission.
Right, and so all this is still the, okay,
But still have to get seller's permission than that. So if they're going contingent too, you're gonna see they got clarity in that coming up. Here it is, when seller's consent is required on the sale of buyer's property. So a buyer must obtain seller's written consent before buyer accepts any offer for the sale of buyer's property. That one, like you said, like you asked, is contingent on the sale or closing of that second buyer's property. And or has a closing date less than 30 or more than, now they changed it to 45 days. So be prepared, you've got to get permission if it's 45 days and over. So be prepared, that's a big update that might get some people. Most of our closings are definitely under 45 days. Most of the time, but you're really gonna have to calculate, and the one thing that will snafu you is if you are got 1 day left and you send out a counter and they don't respond to the next day, now you're under the time that you have to get seller's permission. And that has happened in here.
It happened to me last year.
What happened, Josh?
We had an offer that had a 30-day close, we were fine, right? So we went ahead to get it signed. We needed one last initial from a buyer, get it back over to them. They signed it and then returned it to us.
Next day.
Right, we're under contract. I send over the contract to the listing agent for, we're acting our buyer on. And the buyer, they had gotten another offer that was higher in the meantime, so they wanted to find a way to get out of our deal. So because now from our mutual acceptance to closing date on the deal on the contingent property was now 29 days instead of 30.
Yep.
They terminated the transaction, and technically they could have kept our buyer's earnest money as well.
Yeah.
So we ended up, obviously, with a very upset client, who, ended up not buying with us in the end. It's a shady move, right? But by the lines of the letter of the contract, they're able to get out of the contract.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Josh. I've been telling this story every time we deal with the, 22B, and I've never said, yeah, this happened to Josh.
Oh, yeah, oh, man.
But, it's nice that he will, yeah. Yeah, so timelines matter, days matter, and when you're in those situations where you're so close to that deadline, and because the mutual acceptance is not gonna happen till the next day, and it changes your timeline, you have to get permission. Now you have to get it above 45 days closing also. You really gotta look at those timelines. Be really, really careful. Next, now they're defining the form in here, thank God. Seller's consent shall be seller's consent shall be on seller's consent, contingent sale form 90L or similar form. So now there's a 90L that seller will have to sign to grant permission for any one of those differences. That's accepting a contingent purchase on that buyer's home, contingent property, or it's closing before 30 days, or if it's closing after 45 days. So any of those, you have to get seller's permission, or you could be in that same situation that happened to John. Okay, if buyer accepts any such offer without seller's prior written consent, seller may terminate this agreement. So now they've changed the language to say may, then from seller shall have 3 days to terminate. So now they say may terminate this agreement within 3 days from buyer's notice that the contingency is satisfied. So can you imagine, like, you finally, oh, great, I got the deal put together, we got our buyer sold, that's 2 deals I'm getting paid on. And all of a sudden, 3 business days later, you get the termination notice from the listing broker. Like, what?
While you're skiing or these.
Yeah. Oh,
Right on your family.
oh. Don't do it. So from buyer's notice that the contingency is satisfied, so they remove the which notice section. And upon seller's termination, buyer shall be in default and seller shall be entitled to remedies as provided for in the agreement. Seller's termination shall be on the contingency property notice form 90K or a similar form. So you're gonna use the 90K to give the notice that seller's terminating because you didn't get our permission. If seller does not timely terminate, the agreement shall not be affected. So meaning if the seller misses their deadline, it's the same thing. You can't hold on to it like, oh, I got a trump card, haha, I'm gonna hold on to this. Maybe we can get another better deal. And you miss the deadline. You can't do that. You're gonna have to issue the notice by the 3 business days. Once you know that they've actually accepted the deal and sent you the notice. All right. Property remains on market, section's been updated. Seller may keep the property on the market in the contingent status. Again, if you accept a contingent deal, MLS status for that property, for that listing has to be contingent. It can never be, oh, we're gonna keep it active still. You can't do that. Until seller has received notice that buyer has satisfied or waived this contingency. If prior to that time, seller accepts another offer, seller shall include the second buyer's addendum form 39 or similar form as a condition to its acceptance. So again, don't sign around another property and sell the house twice. You have to be able to do this. Seller shall give notice to buyer and shall give buyer blank 5 days not filled in. We won't
I got a
complete.
question on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your Property remains on market, so you accepted a contingent offer.
Yes,
That is also subject to an inspection. You
yeah,
don't change it to pending inspection, you just change it.
contingent,
even
yes.
though there's subject to inspection.
correct. The status doesn't go from pending inspection to contingent. Contingent is they can be bumped at any time. That's the only teeth in the contracts for our sellers. Because a lot of times sellers are like, why would we take contingent when we can just get an offer and close instead of having to wait? So that's the reasoning behind that. Thanks Josh for that comment, because that does put a lot of clarity in there. Buyer's property failure to close. Buyer shall give notice to seller within 2 days of learning that the sale of buyer's property has failed to close instead of just failed. Such notice must be given regardless of whether buyer chooses to proceed with this agreement and shall be on the contingency property notice form 90K or similar form. Thank God they're putting clarity into all these sections on which form do you use. Because constantly we're seeing like form 34s coming over and brokers trying to write language to, try to satisfy these things. And I just hate it. Just there's a form for that. There's a form for that. Nine times out of 10, the form's already in the forms library.
But the way they have it in the MLS is like all over the place. They need to categorize the forms, like where it has listing forms.
Oh,
Separate category, but they don't have all the unique purposes.
well, thankfully, we do that for you in transaction desk. We do forms packs for you guys. So those are, if you're writing up using transaction desk, forms packs are ready. You click the listing, you can write with the transaction desk icon. And then in the second box down, there's a drop down button and you choose just our office. Yeah, I build all of those out. All of them. There's even ones for off-market sales to an identified buyer and even off-market for sale by owner deals in there. Forms packs, they're all ready to go. All right, let's keep going. 22, okay, time to jump to a new form. Here's 22C, seller financing addendum. A lot of these have been added some clarity, I think, to some of the new laws and rules that have been put in place. Washington State DFI, what is it? The Department of Financial Institution waiver or exemption. So now there's an exemption under the new Washington rules. And it is to identify an exemption from the licensing requirements under the RCW 31.04. If seller does not give notice to buyer, that seller either has one, obtained a DFI waiver, or two, identified an exemption from the RCW 3104 under the WAC 208-620-104 or WAC 208-620-105. Within 5 days, if not filled in, of mutual acceptance, buyer may terminate the agreement at any time prior to seller giving such notice. They've removed if. Now it's if seller is not exempt from RCW 3104 and DFI does not grant a DFI waiver, seller may terminate this agreement within 5 days, if not filled in the mutual acceptance, provided seller timely applied for and made a good faith effort to obtain a DFI waiver. If either party terminates under this paragraph, earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. So the DFI waivers, if a seller's giving their own financing, they're not a financial institution, they're basically holding the note, holding the loan to the buyer, either for down payment or however way you do it, note deed of trust, any of the different ways, the seller is still supposed to get the waiver. There's a whole bunch of different things on how they're exempt. Just pull up the RCWs, go through it. There are forms you can help the seller get to do, but you're supposed to do this on every single 22C deal. So if you're getting seller financing, even if you're representing a buyer, know that the seller's got to get this. I don't care who party, listing broker, buyer broker, whoever's going to do it to help. It's got to be done. So just make sure that happens. It's good to get these things even up front. If your seller's going to offer seller financing, get it, have it done, have it ready to go. All that does is speeds up the process and it eliminates the step for the buyer being able to back out on your seller, and vice versa. Seller can now terminate too if they can't get it in time. So there's more clarity in here for that. Season added now for the disclosure. If the property will be used for a residential dwelling, seller shall provide buyer with a residential disclosure summary prescribed by DFI or complaint or complaint. Compliance. God, I can't. I've been reading so much. Sorry. Compliant federal disclosure under Regulation Z 12 CFR 1026 that includes the material terms and conditions of the loan and the cost of financing. So all that's got to be disclosed and clear. These letters have all changed down. No biggie. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, again, they did US funds. They took off the United States. Yes, good enough to disclose. And then the down payment program, if they're using one. Oh, this is, hold on. This is the 22EF update. Okay, so 22EF is going to be updated in this section to show if you're going to waive financing, but you're going to have a down payment program, now they've added that box.
And then you still need an inspection.
Yeah, and you still need inspection, so. Yeah, that's in here.
Yeah, it is.
That's already in this for saying the seller shall allow. But they didn't show the next page. They've only put so nothing else has changed in the, oh no, that is only one. Yeah. Yeah, let's see.
So Eric, selling stock for your down payment, that you want an EF on that for other.
Remember, checkings or savings? If it's not in checking or savings, pretty much that's your rule of thumb, period. You need
I
EF.
have a story about the investment funds. I had a client that had a listing and we got an offer on a property and they were going to use their investment funds to for their down payment, so they need to liquidate in whatever amount of days it typically takes, but when they started that process, they found out that the funds that they were going to withdraw from, you had to be at a certain age to do so, period, because they weren't vested. Like if you have a 401k, like I do, and I can just go withdraw from that, that person could not.
Yeah, certain ones you can't even withdraw from until you hit a certain age, until you actually retire. So there are stipulations in some of those things. So, yeah.
Yeah, they had to retire like completely from the Washington state because they were a teacher and they couldn't withdraw any of those funds until that time took place.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the whole thing's about show me the money, right? So down payment program is now added. Next is 22J is being updated. And buyer has received the above seller's disclosure and all documents, if any, buyer has received. So now they put clarity that buyers received them, if there's any.
I don't think that word, because
I know that's.
I've never in 20-something years, I've never seen anyone that had knowledge of lead-based paint.
Yeah,
you know?
It's a federal thing, so that's,
Yeah.
well, there are houses like houses that have lead-based paint and they have to do the abatement thing, the process thing, they have to file it. Oh yeah, we've seen them.
I've had somebody do this.
Yeah, so if you got report and they have it, you gotta supply them.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Okay.
It's rare, but it happens. All right, there's clarity in this. Let's keep going. Next is land and acreage addendum. So the what did they call it? The 22L and A? 22L and A. Okay, yeah. Yeah, now it's L. It's funny. 22L and A. What did they update? What did we update? Okay. The parties acknowledge that water rights do not automatically transfer with title to the property. And the parties should consult with an attorney to facilitate the transfer of any water rights. So all it takes is some lawsuits like, oh, yeah, you can drill a well on this land, go ahead, buy it. Great, go there, they buy it, they close, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you need to get a transfer of rights for the water. Well, how do I get that? Oh, you're gonna have to hire an attorney. You can't, nope, sorry, no water's available.
Part of their.
What? Well, my land's not worth anything now. I'm suing.
Isn't that something they should be bringing up to the village?
Yeah, definitely would want that.
Hey, Eric,
Yo,
it looks like on the second page under. Completed.
oh, they did? Might have scrolled a little too fast. Oh, they did. Yeah. Good catch. Yeah, this feasibility study contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived unless within 20 days. So, yeah, they've increased it to, 10 days was not enough. I mean, clearly, we talk about that all the time. When it comes to vacant land, you're dealing with counties and freaking everyone else.
Still gonna be put in 30 days. Anyway.
I mean, 20 days, it's like, if you're doing the feasibility of anything, and when it comes to land and it's under 20,
It should be.
that scares me right away. So, yeah, they've changed to actually double that. That's good. So it's 20 days now. Good catch.
Say that again, that during this feasibility study section is when they should have done the rights the rights for the well water?
No, it's for the buyer to investigate the property to their full extent. So it's anything and everything under the sun that has to do with that property. Buyer has to find out. Oh, where am I gonna get my water? I need to go find out, right? They need to go find out. So it's not just,
It's not automatically done.
no, it's not automatically transferred.
Within your feasibility period, that's important.
Yeah, very important. Okay, all right, next is the section about crops, land, lease review contingency. We're not doing a lot of these, and for the sake of time, I think we're gonna skip this one. What do you guys think? You guys okay with that?
I don't get any props.
Yeah, just know that if you're gonna do with the land and acreage addendum, this section's totally been added. And it's really drilling down on the fact that buyers got to determine in their sole discretion whether the property's, good for them for any of that, purposes. So let's skip this one just because it's already almost 11:30. We got a lot still to go. All right, now we're in the well addendum, 22R. So now it's well inspection. They've removed contingency. This agreement is conditioned on approval. Now it's just well inspection. Buyer is advised to conduct all inspections necessary or reasonable to ensure that the well and or water quality and supply is satisfactory to buyer. Such inspections may include testing of flow rate, purity standards, organic and inorganic, verification that the source is adequate and that the system meets federal, state and or local standards, as well as any other matter of concern to buyer. Any inspections shall be ordered by buyer, performed by qualified inspectors of buyer's choice and completed at buyer's expense. Buyer shall have the right to attend the inspection. Getting rid of all of this. All of that's been removed. Ooh, so now they're separating it. Yep. So water quality contingency. The agreement is contingent on buyer's approval of an inspection of the water quality and or purity tests, organic and inorganic water quality tests shall be performed by a qualified professional. The water quality and or purity test shall or shall not be submitted to a private lab for further evaluation. Has anybody had to do this one yet? Sending to a private lab? How long does it take?
They wanted, I want to say like 7 or 10 days. But we paid for a rush and got it in like 3 or 4.
Yeah, so now they've amended it to put 15 days if not filled in. It was 10 days before. So if you got 15 days, by default.
Well, and to get an inspector out there too.
Oh, I know.
So it could be a 2-week process.
That is why they extended it, because they've had people like, oh, no, you waived it. Sorry. And then it comes back, oh, no, the test's bad. I want out. Buyer stuck. So they're amending it to include for 15 days by default now. So this water quality contingency shall be deemed waived, and so it shall not be obligated to make repairs or modifications unless within 15 days, if not filled in, of mutual acceptance. Buyer gives written notice of A, disapproving the inspection and terminating the agreement, or B, proposing repairs to the well related to water quality or modification to the agreement. And now B, a water quantity contingency. The agreement is contingent on buyer's approval of an inspection, including water quantity tests, flow rates, and verification that the source is adequate, compliance with federal, state, and or local standards, and 3, any other matter of concern to buyer. The water quantity test shall be performed by a qualified professional. So now you're separating out that it's not only the quantity and quality, you got them completely separated now. They're both in here, and I'm guessing this one will have a 15-day too. Yep, this water quantity contingency shall be completely deemed waived. So same thing, same language, exactly same. It's 15 days for both by default. Now you're gonna have to define how long it takes. Buyer brokers, I know you're trying to be competitive, but when it comes to these wells, especially in different outlying areas, it's really hard to get people out. So I don't know if I'd be messing with this and going below 15 days. Especially when, even Andrew just said that he had the deal and they said it's gonna be 2 weeks.
No, on Whidbey Island.
That was on Woodby Island? Okay. Next is buyer's request for modification of repairs. This whole section's been updated. If buyer requests for repairs or modifications pursuant to paragraph 4A or paragraph 4B, the parties shall negotiate as set forth in paragraph 4C. Buyer's initial request and buyer's response made in accordance with the following procedures are irrevocable for the time period provided. Seller's response to request for modification repairs, seller shall have 3 days, if not filled in, after receipt of buyer's request for repairs or modification to give notice that seller, 1, agrees to the repairs or modifications proposed by buyer, 2, agrees to some of the repairs or modifications proposed by buyer, 3, rejects all repairs or modifications proposed by buyer, or 4, offers a different or additional repairs or modifications. If seller agrees to the terms of buyer's request for repairs or modifications, the contingency shall be satisfied and buyer's reply shall not be necessary. If seller does not agree to all buyer's repairs or modifications, buyer shall have an opportunity to reply as follows. Buyer's reply: if seller does not agree to all repairs, modifications proposed by buyer, buyer shall have 3 days not filled in from either the day buyer receives the seller's response, or if seller fails to timely respond, the day's seller's response period ends, whichever is earlier, to 1, accept the seller's response, at which time this contingency shall be satisfied, 2, agree with seller on other remedies, or 3, disapproves the well inspection and terminate the agreement, in which event the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. These time periods for negotiating repairs or modifications shall not repeat. The parties must either reach a written agreement or buyer must terminate this agreement by the buyer's reply deadline set forth in paragraph 4C2. Buyer's inaction during buyer's reply period shall result in waiver of this well inspection contingency, in which case seller shall not be obligated to make any repairs or modifications whatsoever, and this contingency shall be deemed waived. It's just like the 35, right? Language of 35. Home inspection, same thing. That's all added into this whole section now. And then now 5, water rights transfer. The parties acknowledge that water rights do not automatically transfer with title to the property, and the parties should consult with an attorney to facilitate the transfer of any water rights. Such transfers may require the consent of third parties and governmental agencies. Any transfer costs, including obligations, including obtaining any required consents, shall be paid by, now you're designating who's paying for it. Section 6 is the same, local requirements. Really, if the property's on a well, it's really going to be about transferring water rights, especially in these shared wells and stuff like that. You're gonna have to do some research, by our brokers on, get some help from title on what they're saying on water rights, are served to the property. If it's listing brokers, if you know that these have to be transferred and you're dealing with that, you better get this figured out before you list the property. It's just gonna make things run way smoother for everybody.
They'll have certificate.
Oh, yeah.
They'll, I've seen it. I've had it.
Mhm.
I had it,
Yeah, so just be prepared that now that this is in the agreements, that it's gotta be figured out and who is paying for it.
And don't blow up your dates too, so extend it out if you.
Yeah, don't move forward without that figured out.
Yeah, just treat it like.
Just treat it like a septic, yeah, exactly.
Extend it out.
Extend it. And then, of course, the other box. 22T title contingency has been updated. So if buyer receives the preliminary commitment before mutual acceptance, buyer's time to review shall begin on mutual acceptance. The preliminary commitment delivered for review under this contingency need not identify buyer as the insured. So now this language is in here. So they don't have to actually name the buyer in the preliminary report, of course, because they don't know who the buyer is yet. Yep. Okay, that's good. Manufactured home updates, same exact things as the other boilerplate language in the purchase and sale agreements. Those are all going to match. Same thing. You're going to choose the information verification of period when it is going to expire, or is it going to be satisfied and waived right away? Same. And then it's going to be the same thing for earnest money, same thing for the interplead actions raised, same thing for the access permissions for the remote stuff, all that, same closing access codes, the same. Okay, we got same. Same thing. Bars, yep, same. Okay, so these are all same thing. Fair housing's added in section Z. Vacant land, I'm guessing it's gonna be same, except we got a couple different things here.
Just
Nope.
feasibility.
Feasibility, right? Information verification, you're gonna change, and then 15, there's no expiration date, nothing. It's just feasibility contingency expires so many days after mutual acceptance. And then now it's just, or you're gonna satisfy, golly, vacant land, this one really scares me. You're just satisfying waiving it. If you're having a feasibility, which you should anyway, for vacant land, always add the feasibility study addendum. And that one is coming up here next.
Yeah.
But just include it and make sure the times match. You're gonna have 20 days on the feasibility addendum. Make sure on the front page that it's 20 also. Just make it match. If it's not matching, then you're gonna have totally, unclear language, and which date is right, I don't know. Okay, same thing, interpleads updated, all those the same. Wait a minute, let me go back up because I saw a couple. Oh, yeah, that's the same. Same thing, FERPTA. Going. Okay. So U is added and it's going to state subdivision. So they're separating it out. Subdivision, if the property must be subdivided, seller represents that there has been preliminary plat approval for the property, and this agreement is conditioned on the recording of the final plat containing the property on or before the date specified in a specific term number 14. If the final plat is not recorded by such date, this agreement shall terminate. The earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. So now you got it clear as day that if it's going to be subdivided and that it's got preliminary plat approval, now you can mark it, and now it's got the language to back it up. It's not just the box up on the front. That's nice to have that. So feasibility contingency is next. Unless satisfied, waived, buyer shall have times period set forth in specific term number 15 to verify the suitability of the property for buyer's intended use, including whether, and now it goes into the same stuff there before. And now it's areas, sensitive areas instead of area. So it's everything under that. And they removed the if buyer does not give timely notice. They've removed all of that and they've added in V. Seller shall cooperate with buyer in obtaining permits or any other approvals. Buyer may reasonably require for buyer's intended use of the property, provided that seller shall not be required to incur any liability or expenses in doing so. If buyer does not give timely or does not give notice of disapproval on or before the time period set forth in the specific term number 15, this feasibility contingency shall exclusively be deemed satisfied. If buyer gives timely notice of disapproval, then this agreement shall terminate. The earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. The feasibility contingency addendum MLS form 35F, if included in the agreement, supersedes the oh, thank God they put this, supersedes the feasibility contingency in specific term number 15 and this general term V. So there it is. They made clarity that if you have different timelines, and like I said, we have to deal with this. They have a different date on the front page, and then the feasibility 35F has a totally different date. Now, if you use the 35F, it supersedes what's on the front. But like I said, make that match, and you won't have any issues with clarity on that. Okay, that part's totally updated. Information verification period is the same thing. That's updated on the front page. So this goes along with everything else and all of our other agreements. The property is suitable for buyer's intended use and to ensure the water supply is sufficient. So they're making it clear about the water supply again. And now fair housing, just like, and then every one of our purchase and sale agreements now, it's on, it's in, and added in the boilerplate language. And instead of Z, this one is Y. Okay, condos purchases and sale agreements, same thing, same thing. All the same. Information verification period, you're doing the same. Numbers have just bumped up. Okay, same. Same thing, interplead costs are up, access and permissions added. And access codes the same. Internet charges, same. FERPTA fees, that is the same as the other agreements. Let's see where they've added at. Same thing, his and her removed. Information verifications, same for the update. And same thing about the water supply. Properties suitable for buyers' intended use. And then fair housing added as BB instead of Z or Y in the condos is BB. Running out of letters, or excuse me, numbers and letter, now they double up. Okay, inspection addendum 35 is now updated. Inspection report, okay, thank God. This one, number 4, buyer shall not provide the inspection report or portions of the report to seller unless seller requests otherwise, so they remove this section, in writing. Upon seller's written request, buyer shall provide to seller the inspection report, portions of the report, or the inspector's recommendation for additional inspections as requested by seller. So waiver of contingency by buyer, if buyer provides any portion of the inspection report to seller without seller's prior written request or consent, the inspection contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived. Now B is seller request. The section of any checkbox below by seller shall not be considered a counteroffer. So, yes.
What if the listing agent on behalf of the seller in writing requests the report?
If the listing agent requests it,
Yeah.
that's done on the 35C.
Yeah.
But why? Why do they want it?
No, they want a copy of the report.
Yeah.
And the seller request listing agent said, yeah, we would like a copy of the report before we respond. Send it
So-
through. I think it would, yeah,
Can,
I just had that happen.
yeah, as long as it's in writing, it's in writing.
that's the thing, it's gotta be in writing. 35C,
Text message.
nah, I don't like that.
It's in writing, yeah.
Contract.
It is, but contracts, there was a situation that happened up north where the broker said, yeah, we want to see the report, text it over there, right? All of a sudden, the seller has a relative who's an attorney, said, you don't want to see that inspection report. Told the broker, oh, I don't want that. Why did you, now the broker's got it. What is it? Now they have knowledge about it and it becomes a whole issue, it's a can of worms.
I wouldn't want it.
It's just always, just get it in writing, get it in writing. 35C for consent. Seller signs it. So if the listing broker says to you, yeah, we want to see it, say, okay, have your seller send us the signed 35C, we'll send it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now you're covered. They can't say they didn't request it. Waiver of the contingency, so it's the same thing. Seller's request, the section of any checkbox, modifications. Why did they put seller? Okay, so buyer provide only the portions of the inspection report related to the requested repairs or modifications to seller. Related to the requested repairs or modifications to seller. Okay, they've removed the agreement. And now they've added in the third box. There was only 2 before, now there's 3. If buyer provides notice of additional inspections pursuant to paragraph 5, seller requests that buyer provide a copy of the inspector's recommendation for additional inspections to seller. So now it's in here clear, huh? You just have it?
How that happens too.
Yeah, so now, if you're asking for additional inspections, which you've got to provide the notice and just the home inspector's recommendations, now there's a clear-cut way for the seller to grant permission in the agreement. To say, if you're gonna ask for additional inspections, I wanna see what is the additional inspections about. So a lot more clarity in
Otherwise,
there.
we're just asking for the additional inspections and not.
And it's big.
Well, no,
It's not
so
provided clarity.
so the reason they did this is because of that, right? Because the seller's like, what do you gotta give, right? Because in order for the additional inspections to kick in, which you're already agreeing to it in the 35, right? The seller's gonna already, if you have to do it, additional inspections, buyer broker has to prepare the 35R, you're marking the box that notice of additional inspections is starting, and the attachment that goes with that is the home inspector's recommendations for further evaluations. Only, that's it. No pictures, no information like, oh, yep, the roof needs additional inspections. It's just the wording. Additional inspections are being performed.
Right, is it even showing where those additional inspections?
And that's-
No,
no,
you're just having.
you're just
inspector's
using
name
the
and
word,
saying additional
right.
inspection. Okay.
Yeah. So now you can predetermine if your seller wants to see pages of what is the additional inspections on. So now you can predetermine that in writing from the agreement and not have to go, back and forth and be scared like, oh no, now do I send copies of the actual, whatever's being further evaluated?
You could send that, you could ask for,
Because before they would come in and say, oh, we need the roof check, but before you know it, they're checking other things on that additional inspection.
Well, yeah, you're supposed to clearly identify, what's gonna be additionally inspected.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, just, you got it, yeah, put clarity in there. Okay, keep going. So, on or before the end of the initial inspection period, buyer provides notice that buyer will seek additional inspections, and upon seller's request, a copy of the inspector's recommendation. If buyer provides timely notice of additional inspections and requested by seller a copy of the inspector's recommendation, buyer shall have 5 days, and not filled in, after giving the notice to obtain the additional inspection or inspections as recommended by the inspector, and the initial inspection period shall be so extended. We're putting clarity to show that it's being extended from the time you give the notice. So if you had a 10-day inspection, you're in there 5 days, you give the notice. So 5 more days, it's still the same thing as 10 days. It's not 10 plus 5 automatic. If you gave, it's the additional. So be careful. If you need more time, you got some expert that's gotta come in, you may have to hold off. Start working behind the scenes and getting that other, expert, lined up to, find out when they're actually gonna come and be able to perform that additional inspection. So just, yeah, you really gotta start communicating and get that figured out before you actually give the notice. Because as soon as you give the notice, the 5 additional days start from that time period. It doesn't add on to your original. That's kind of been the same, but now there's more clarity that, and if requested by seller, a copy of the inspector's recommendation. All right, questions? Got that one pretty good. All right, or specialists. So it's been added, or a specialist who recommended the repair. For repairs. Keep going. We're getting there. Next is the 35C. So this is the seller request inspection report. They're getting rid of the consent. It's just seller request inspection report form, 35C. They totally renamed it. Buyer provide only portions of the inspection report related to the requested repairs or modifications to the agreement to seller. Or thirdly, same thing, seller requests that buyer provide a copy of the inspection recommendation for additional inspections to seller. So now you can get it in writing if you want it shown if they need additional inspections. Right, for further evaluations by the home inspector. Now you've got it clear that section, you can get that in writing if your seller wants to see what it is they're additionally inspecting. Okay, that's clear. Feasibility, this is just gonna follow exactly probably like the same stuff from what they said, but now it's been bumped automatically to 20 days. So showing everybody that feasibility study should not be 10 days. Right? Now it's defaulting to 20. And then use this feasibility contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived, right? If you're past that. Buyer due diligence, they're calling it. Buyer should not rely on any oral statements concerning the property made by the seller, listing broker, or buyer broker. Buyer should inquire at the city or county and water, sewer, or other special districts in which the property is located. Buyer's inquiry shall include but not be limited to whether the property can be platted, developed, and or built on now or in the future and the related costs. So now they're putting it straight in here like, you think you can build on this, hey, you better go find out. Property access, they've separated and moved the numbers. Only thing they're adding in now that seller shall cooperate with buyer in obtaining permits or other approvals. Buyer may reasonably require for buyer's intended use of the property, provided that seller shall not be required to incur any liability or expense in doing so. There's been some cases where counties and stuff need the seller, like, oh, you're not the seller yet, you can't even fill this out. Seller's like, oh, I'm not filling it out, I'm not getting involved. You're gonna buy this property to try to build on it and stuff. I'm not doing anything. Well, it's not gonna cost you anything, so, seller, you need to at least sign this and fill in this section. No, I'm not doing that. I don't have to do that. The contract doesn't say I have to. Now it does. If the seller is gonna, agree to sell their property to a buyer and they're gonna have a feasibility, and then there's gonna be some documentation that the seller has to fill in now, and it's not gonna cost them anything. They're supposed to cooperate. That's all it
They
is.
have now quite a few companies that'll do this.
Oh, yeah.
For you.
Yeah, lot launcher, lotlauncher.com, those guys will do the whole feasibility study for your clients.
Yep.
All of it. Depends in how the cost goes along with how, a la carte, but you can do the whole feasibility study package if you want to, and they'll do it all. Yeah, lotlauncher.com. Okay, and then the number box, it was 3, but now it's 4. The agreement, this is the automatic termination if you don't timely give the approval of the feasibility. I love this because it doesn't lock the buyer into buying it if they don't get it in time by, stuff. This way you have to get an extension from the seller. Otherwise it's automatically going to terminate rather than automatically your buyer waives the feasibility and buys a vacant piece of land. I don't know. I'm a big fan of having the box checked every time.
Yep.
Questions? We're move on. All right, let's keep going. Pre-inspections, they're just calling it this pre-inspection. It was called before pre-contract inspection. And upon seller's written request, buyer shall provide the inspection report to seller is added in there. Same thing. Buyer can't share those reports. Oh, and they're removing the section for indemnification. Huh. I wonder why they removed that. Wow. I'm gonna have to ask about that one too.
Yeah.
Why? That's the 35P. Why did they do that? 75. That's strange. We usually like to see the hold harmless is, in there to protect our clients, but I wonder why that one happened. All right, 35R response. Okay, so yep, they're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna tie things together from the 35C for granting permission and in the 35 about if the seller is gonna request pages of the report of the inspection or the whole report. So buyer gives notice of additional inspection. If requested by seller, the inspector's recommendation is attached. The time for buyer's response, all that is extended as provided for in paragraph 5 of Form 35. So that's where the timeline is. It's defaulted to the 5 days, but you can write it in. It could be more, it could be less, but you better follow along like, how long that is. So if requested by the seller, so you guys are gonna have to really negotiate now in the 35 on whether or not those are gonna be given to the seller for additional inspections. Okay, and the next note, if buyer provides any portion of the inspection report to seller or listing broker without seller's written request. So now it's just written request. The inspection contingency shall be conclusively be deemed waived. So if you're providing it without the written request, you're waiving it. So again, still don't provide pages of the inspection report. If you've got to do additional inspections, everything's the same. You just have to black out that and the inspector's recommendations for further evaluations. The words only, no photos. Nothing, no other words. We showed in class in the last forms class when we went to the 35, 35R that if you got to do additional inspections, how to use the PDF program. I think it's ilovepdf.com. You can use, upload that one page, of the inspector's report, and you can use a tool to basically black out everything, even the photos, except for it says home inspectors further evaluations, recommendations, for the crawl space or whatever, you're blacking out everything, just the words of home inspectors further evaluations.
So you're blacking out the crawl space, you're not even.
Yeah.
putting them
Yeah.
into-
Yeah.
And that goes back to this woman's question about how do they know what you're bringing in specialists for?
Well, how do you do that now?
Yeah.
You gotta grant the permission on the 35C.
Yeah.
If your seller wants to know what they're gonna further evaluate, otherwise it's for them to come back and go through. The whole point is like, they didn't want the argument to be, what is your buyer inspecting? They have to inspect the whole house. It doesn't matter. They have a timeline to go do it, right? Doesn't matter what they're gonna go inspect. Now there's clarity to grant the permission to see what it is. Are they further evaluating? Oh, you want to further evaluate the roof, crawl space, the water in the crawl space, the drainage, the water, the well. I mean, if it's everything.
We say all this to the.
You can verbally do it. But you can't provide anything, without written consent. That's the only thing that changed. Title. Form title? Notice requires, that's. Second buyer's addendum. This is being updated. Oh, they're adding in the form numbers straight in to say what the form is. Oh my goodness, thank you. Any phone calls we get, what form do I use to give notice for this? Now it's gonna be right in there. Notice the second buyer, same thing, now form 39N is gonna be used. Second buyer, form 39N. Computation of time for purpose of computing time, except for the timelines that in this addendum and the deposit of earnest money. All timelines shall begin on seller's notice. First buyer terminated prior sale. So get now, cool. They put clarity into that when you got the backup. So now it's clear. When's it gonna begin? All right, Form 40. Fill in the following completely and sign. They're giving you guys the reminder, you gotta sign it. And then 2 is gonna say, send a copy to the listing firm and closing agent. These instructions have always been the same, but nobody still follows this to this day.
Why not?
Yeah.
So easy.
How many people send it to the listing broker? Never.
No.
It's self-explanatory.
I know. And of course, retain a copy.
Yeah, the PC, does that, do they need to be updated too?
No, I mean, they should be following the
I've
instructions
never-
either
I
way.
haven't signed that.
Yeah, they can, TCs can sign on your behalf and it says it right on there. You know, they usually stamp it. Yep. Including total compensation and sign. So there's only update for that. And then total seller funded compensation, including buyer brokerage and listing compensation. So there's a total. So they've updated it. If there's buyer brokerage compensation. Okay, 41C is the buyer brokerage firm's compensation form. Okay. The only update to that is they removed the section to state the purchase price offered by buyer reflects this. Okay. Bump response has been updated to drop to the more than 45 days. So there it is. So that goes along the same thing of the 22B. And then rental agreements are changing to state owner instead of landlord. The reason they can finally do this is that they finally passed a law that our sellers will not be considered landlord tenant law acts, you know, or that landlord tenant law act will not go onto the seller, you know, if you do the rental
Yeah.
agreement.
For up to
But it's up
100
to
days.
60 or 90. It's one of the other.
It's
If it's 60.
90, which was- It's 90, which is interesting because most lenders aren't gonna
Yeah.
let 90 apply, but anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, renter's right to
Your insurance.
renter and owner,
Insurance.
owner, renter. So, yeah, so this is the 65B or 65A, right? Yeah, 65A. Renter, yeah, so tenant, so that's renter, owner. All of those parties acknowledge that renter's occupancy is not governed by the residential landlord tenant law act. So right there, it's finally removed. There's clarity in that. City of Seattle things removed. Oh, God, release of rental, release of real estate firms, so owner and renter, so they just changed the wording in here again. And then attorney's fees, if either party institutes suit against the other concerning this agreement, the prevailing party is entitled to reasonable attorney's fees and expenses. Okay, smoke detector section, again, renter acknowledges owner, this only pertains to multifamily. I see this mistakenly filled out all the time. This section 10 only pertains if the property is multifamily building, more than one unit. So single family residential, you don't even have to fill in any of this section, only if it's multifamily. Or, yeah, so this always gets, I see this gets filled out tons of times.
Yeah.
Okay, same thing, renter, boom, 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 landlord. Where's the timeline though? I don't quite see the thing for the timeline. I know.
What are you talking about?
I was trying to find the section for how long the agreement, but it doesn't, like, if it's over the 90 or 60.
How long is it all for? It's right there. Okay.
8,
We'll figure it out.
possession, oh yeah, and renter's right of preference shall terminate on At so-and-so at 9, yeah, purchase probably not. Prorated daily, okay, so is it 3?
On form 65B.
We're in the A though. Oh, because it's for the buyer's access first, right? That's why. Okay, so get into the 65B. This one will state, right?
Yeah.
Possession renders title. Okay, this is the same.
Right there on.
So free term.
3 months.
So it's the 90-day. Yeah, which shall not be more than 3 months after closing. So now it's 3 months is the max. 90 days is the max. If it's over 90 days, then the Washington State Tenant Law Act comes into play. Yeah, buyers have to take possession within 60 days, so 59 days is usually the max. Anyway, because if they're getting a loan, they're signing the affidavit at closing that, yep, I intend to occupy this property. I'm gonna be the primary, it's gonna be my residence or whatever. Within this time frame, and the lender's like, oh yeah, you're buying it and you're gonna occupy it, right? Yep, I'm gonna occupy it. Well, 59 days is the max. They can basically let a seller maintain possession. We don't want that to happen anyway. We want possession beyond closing 100% of the time anyway. Okay, so this is the same, but it's flip-flop from the seller side to the, from buyer side. That's the same. They've removed the same things for City of Seattle. Renter warrants that renter was represented by an attorney licensed to practice law in Washington or by a real estate broker licensed under RCW 1885 during negotiation of the purchase and sale agreement for the sale of the property or at the time of closing. Part of that RCW, in order to be exempt from the Washington State Tenant Law Act, was that you were represented by an attorney or a real estate broker. So that was part of the exemption. And now it's clearly in the form. No distressed home, that's the same for the not a distressed property. Release of real estate firms, now it's changing from the names from the owner to the renter, same. And then attorney fees, that's the same. Smoke detector, that's the same. All that's the same as the other ones. And then it's just changing the wording from owner to renters. And then signature lines are the same for that. Mold renter, same. And they just moved the numbers down to, or up, 1. Lease, straight up lease agreement, the form 68. We don't do a lot of these, thank God. And this is going to be the same thing about under mutual acceptance agreement, tenant shall pay lessor. Now this is keeping the wording of lessor, lessee, instead of owner and renter. Security deposit stuff, all going to change. Prior to the commencement of the term, tenant shall pay lessor the sum of a security deposit, and lessor shall provide tenant a receipt. The security of the security deposit. All right, where's it at? We're not going to dive in those too deep. We got 8 pages left. Local ordinances that's been updated with specific requirements regarding notices, security deposits, rent increases, registration information of the lessor must provide to tenant, and other requirements or restrictions. And this is the mold. Fair housing's been added in. Oh, fair houses added straight in now for number 23. That's got to be notarized too. And here's the section for that. I mean, that's the reason why we don't do a lot of them. 90K contingency property notice. Contingency satisfied or waived. They're just boilerplate adding that in. So this is coming off of the 22B for seller's consent, same thing. That's the, they've removed those for the failure to close and buyer's property not sold, and added buyer's property not sold contingency waived. So even if the buyer's contingent property doesn't sell, the buyer can still move forward and waive. They can mark this box, sign and send it over. Now you satisfied it and they're moving forward. But now they put clarity again, they're also waiving everything. They're waiving everything again. If they do this. Buyer's property failure to close. Buyer properties failed to close, right? So here's the box, they'll mark or failure to close, termination. Buyer hereby gives notice that the sale property has failed to close or will fail to close. This agreement is terminated and the earnest money should be refunded to buyer. Or now there's failure to close and contingency waived. Buyer hereby gives notice that the sale of buyer's property has failed to close. Buyer understands by waiving the contingency, buyer waives all other contingency in the agreement, including financing, inspection, etc. And they've removed that section. Okay, and then seller's notice to buyer is added into the page 2. Okay, termination due to unapproved sale, we're calling it. And buyer accepted an offer for sale of buyer's property. Seller's notice. Sellers. Oh my gosh, they removed all that section. So sellers prior written consent as required under paragraph 2 of Form 22B, that is contingent on the sale of closing of that second buyer's property or has a closing date less than 30 or more than 45 days from the date of mutual acceptance. Buyer is in default and seller hereby terminates the agreement and is entitled to remedies as provided for in the agreement. So meaning that they can take the buyer's earnest money. You don't get permission, seller can terminate, keep their money. Last but not least here, 90L is seller's consent on a contingent sale. This is the consent for the contingent deal. Buyer's request. Buyer requests the seller's consent to the following regarding the sale of buyer's property, which purchase and sale agreement is attached to this request. They have to include the whole copy. They're removing this. And now they're just calling seller's consent for each box for each item. Same thing, they're just separating it out, whether it's contingent, which is contingent upon the sale of the second buyer's property, or seller's buyer's notice of consent of a pending sale, or seller's notice of consent expedited closing. So it's over 45 days, right? Or excuse me, no, less than 30. This one's the expedited, so it's faster closing than 30 days. Seller may not be prepared to close that fast. So now you got to get it in writing. That's the same. It's just more or less they're calling it. Now they're just saying buyer's property pursuant to the purchase and sale agreement dated, whatever the date is of the offer. So you better make sure you guys are communicating to the buyer broker if they're making an offer and like, hey, we want closing in 20 days. Hey, I need to get my seller's, I got to get permission before we accept your offer. Please don't give us a short timeline to accept this, because now I got to get the seller of our buyer's contingent property that they're trying to buy in order to move forward on accepting your offer. So give us time. I got to give this over to them, get permission. So just communicate. Seller's notice of consent adjusted closing. Seller hereby gives notice of seller's consent to buyer for adjusted the closing date for the sale of buyer's property to whatever pursuant to the purchase and sale agreement dated X. So title. So that's title form. So adjusting the closing date for title.
Oh, maybe that one could be other page. It's just,
Yeah, it is. It's 2 of 3.
yeah.
So it's just coming. Yeah, they've extended it. So more pages now. All right. That is it. We are done. We're going to the bar after this. Yeah, we might have to open that. Thank you guys for making it. I know this was tough to go through. But most of these changes are pretty minimal, and I think they're much better than the last changes we've had the last few times in forms. So Thank you for making it. We will provide the recording later. If you want to grind all the way through these 2 hours in 17 minutes, you can watch it again. Thank you, guys. Take care.